Hello. Thank you for tuning in. You are listening to BiteRadio.me's Bringing Inspiration to Earth show. For network or show information, visit www.biteradio.me or call 843-808-0777. And now, the Bringing Inspiration to Earth show with your host, Robert Sharpe. Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this edition of the Bringing Inspiration to Earth show. Today, my very special guest is Stefan Verstappen, and he is author of A Master's Guide to the Way of the Warrior. A Master's Guide to the Way of the Warrior is a unique and comprehensive guide to applied Eastern philosophy and martial arts. This book combines ancient wisdom and modern research with a tough, street-smart perspective. It covers martial arts training methods, such as physical training exercises, hand-to-hand combat strategies, and tactics, weaponry, and escape and evasion tactics. Stefan has been teaching emergency preparedness workshops. He has written 2 books on disaster preparedness, The Art of Urban Survival, and The Community Survival Plan. And you can find out more about his work and other books by visiting his website, which is www.urbansurvivalstrategies.com. And I do have a direct link to his website in the show page description. So with that, I would like to welcome Stefan to the show. Good day, sir. Thanks for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me on, Robert. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's my pleasure. Boy, anything we can do to empower the listener, I am all for that. And it sounds like you've got some great strategies and information available. So before we start talking about the warrior, one of the things that I noticed is that you indicate that our society is under attack by personalities intent on destroying our race. Basically, a reason why we need to reawaken or awaken the warrior within us. So, if you wouldn't mind, would you kind of talk a little bit to the listeners about the idea of what you feel the current environment is that's going to require this warrior within?
Sure. Well, I think anybody that's, not watching mainstream media and is, delving a little bit deeper into the truth behind current events and history and politics and entertainment and what is happening around us will start to see that we are under attack. I know it sounds like, for those unfamiliar with this type of thinking, it sounds like a terrible conspiracy theory, but we actually are by malevolent entities, and by that I mean psychopaths that have usurped the government and the operations of our society. And what they are doing is they are trying to do a lot of things. They're trying to basically destroy us and destroy our creativity and our individuality. So we see this in a numerous multi-pronged attack. For example, we have the educational system, government-run, and there have been numerous books written about the education system, which pretty well clearly indicates that the purpose of our education system is to make people stupid. Then we have things like, the GMO foods. They're being forced on people. We can't, you have to really look to find something that's not already contaminated. How many books have been written on the effects and studies have been done showing that GMO foods are not healthy, and yet we are being forced to eat it? Another example is fluoride in the water. I mean, that's one of the most ridiculous ideas, how that ever came about, to dump this poisonous substance. It's actually rat poison into our water system, and under the guise of it will prevent cavities. It's insane, and especially when there's been dozens of studies and books written that prove that fluoride has an adverse effect on the brain. It makes people dumber, and it inhibits thinking. Then we have vaccines. What's going on with the world with the pharmaceutical companies and medicine, with forcing all these children to have dozens and dozens of vaccines for diseases that we are been told have already long since been extinct for over 50 years. So how come these kids need all these vaccines? And then, lo and behold, there's dozens of studies and dozens of books that have been written to show that the vaccines are harming children, and once again, they're affecting their brains. So what we see is an attack on people. They're trying to make us stupid. They're trying to make us weak. They're trying to, then if we take a look into the media, there's one horror story after another, and the terrorism that, pretty much the government's behind most of that. If not directly, then indirectly through their policies of running around the planet, bombing people, and then believing that there's not going to be any blowback from this. And then we find out it's all been based on lies. There were no weapons of mass destruction. There was no Gulf of Tonkin incident, and so on and so on throughout history. And yet, now we have to worry about terrorism and counterattacks, and the government is, having to increase their surveillance and increase the police powers. And, and then we see the racial divide that's going on right now. Who's organizing all this? Who's instigating this? Well, it turns out that very wealthy millionaires, billionaires, are funding these movements with the sole purpose of creating chaos and creating riots and getting people to attack each other. So what I mean is that there are psychopaths that have taken over the government and have taken over most of the corporations, certainly the banks and the media companies, and they all have a common agenda, and that common agenda is to enslave the rest of humanity to their will. Now, they're doing that in order to enslave humanity. You can't have people that can think for themselves. So hence we see the vaccines, the fluoride, the 12 years of education system that provides you the skills for exactly zero jobs other than maybe ditch digger. And on and on. And then we see people, they want people that are fearful. You need, in order to enslave people, they have to be afraid of you. So boy, oh boy, they step up the surveillance and they step up the police, and they militarize the police, and they want more information, and they want you to have less rights. So we see this as a common pattern. This is a common pattern when you read history of all civilizations that start off well and then devolve into tyranny and slavery, which is where we're heading. And in a previous article I wrote about historical cycles, I show that this has happened many times throughout history, that, societies form and they grow, and then they decay. And when they start to decay, they go into a kind of a tyranny system, a dictatorship, and the people that are in charge are usually very corrupt, mentally unstable individuals, and their goal is to have power over everyone and everything. So that's what they're doing. So what can we do to fight back? Well, that's the next topic.
Well, yeah, before we and I agree with every single one. I mean, if you were to take a high-level look at each of those areas that you identified, I mean, it seems that, you mentioned fear. I mean, it seems that, creating fear is really the basis of many of the actions and the policies and what the desired end result is for many of those things. And I mean, and if you just look around you, everyone is fearful, and it's just to me it's just crazy. Now, and I agree there are plenty of psychopaths, in the heads of a lot of these organizations. But do you think that that this is that there is some type of coordinated effort, or is this just those at the top? And it seems like those at the top, if you create chaos, you create opportunity for those who are at the top that can manipulate things. It seems to me. And so does that, first of all, does it seem like maybe the creation of chaos and the resultant opportunity seem to be, I mean, is that something that you see as maybe one of the reasons behind the desire for chaos? Because, I mean, who would really want chaos?
Well, see, that's one of the mysteries of our society, because when I first began studying this subject and many other subjects, I began with a study of psychopaths, and I created a video on YouTube that's gone pretty viral. It's called Defense Against the Psychopath, and it's also comprises the first chapter in my book, The Art of Urban Survival. And the reason it's the first chapter, because The Art of Urban Survival is a self-defense manual, psychological, physical, and strategic self-defense manual for anybody to quickly learn how to survive all the dangers and hazards of our modern society. And when I was analyzing what's the greatest danger in our society and what really is the source of all this evil that's going on in the world, I mean, it's horrific. You know, you don't want to take a look after a while. It's just overwhelming. The monstrosities, the cruelty, the horror that's going on all around us every day. And who's behind that? I've always wanted to find out. And so my research led me to the concept, to the previous research of other better researchers than I, the theory of the psychopath. And you can't understand what's happening in this world if you don't understand the mind of a psychopath. And that's what I described in the first chapter. So let me briefly explain to you and to your listeners what it is that's about a psychopath. And a psychopath is somebody that is, you cannot imagine how they think. A normal person can never guess how a psychopath thinks, because it is so twisted and it's so bizarre and it's so contrary to anything normal people would understand that it's difficult to understand. So your question is, well, who would benefit? Who would want this chaos? Psychopaths. Psychopaths live on chaos. They feed on it. They have such a twisted personality. For example, when we see the world and the distribution of wealth, and we see that there's 80 people that own more than 90% of the world's population, and yet these people are feverishly working day after day to steal more money, and they already have enough money that they and 1,000 generations of their offspring could live lives of opulence and luxury, and yet they still want more money. More and more. What drives them? Well, you see, it's not greed. We all make the mistake. It's not that it's, because they're greedy. Because after that much money, once you've earned $100 billion, I mean, what is there in the world that you couldn't possibly buy?
Right.
So it's not greed, right? What it is they have there's a part of the brain that lights up when you are excited. And it's the part of the brain that lights up when you take drugs. So if you're an opium addict and you take a puff on the old opium pipe, this part of the brain lights up. Now, in a psychopath, that part of the brain lights up when they see other people suffer. This is the mentality. So it's not that they're stealing all this money because they're greedy. They're stealing all this money because they know the rest of the world is suffering and starving and cutting each other's throat for a buck and turning on each other like rabid dogs fighting over the last scraps of food in the pen. That's why they do it, because they enjoy that. And there's no way to explain it other than something went wrong in the brain chemistry, or the wiring got mixed up at birth, or there's some genetic cause. The jury's still out on what it could be that created these creatures, but they're not human. Don't make the mistake to think that they're human. They don't think like us, they don't feel like us, and they don't act like us. Well, they do act like us by mistake. They mimic us. They're terrific actors. You can be fooled. You think that they're human. But their internal life, their emotional life, their intellectual life is so bizarre. None of us can really comprehend it. So why are they creating all this chaos, this interracial violence? Why are they poisoning us 5 ways to Sunday? Because they want to see us suffer, and they want to see us grovel. And the other thing is they hate what non-psychopaths have, and that is spirit and soul and creativity and love. They hate that. I once heard an explanation of what's the difference between jealousy and envy. And jealousy is if you see your neighbor buy a new car, and it's a great-looking car, and boy, I'd like to have a car like that. And you think to yourself, well, if I work weekends for a couple of years, I can afford a car just like that. That's jealousy. Envy is if you see somebody that possesses something you could never have. So, for example, you see the neighbor, and he's got a beautiful wife. Oh my God, she's an 11 on the scale and a wonderful cook, and you want her, but you know you can never have her. Now you want to kill her. That's envy. And so that's the way it is with these psychopaths. They see in humanity that we have love for our families, love for our society. We laugh, we play music, we paint, we go out on the boat. We care about things. We love our pets. They can't feel that. They're incapable of feeling that. And like with envy, because they can't have it, they want to destroy it. And so that's the explanation behind all this madness. Because I ask myself, too, well, how much more can you steal? How much more power can you have? Why are they doing this? They're doing it because that's what turns them on.
Wow. And you're right. I mean, there's, I could never imagine that. I mean, the idea of getting excited about causing pain and struggle, to me, that's just, it doesn't compute. So, but it does answer the question as to why, like you say, those with so much wealth continue to do so, regardless of the fact that, like you said, their generations can live lives of luxury. But it's to me, it's just, I guess if someone were human or did not have that psychopathic tendency, that they would turn around and do something for humanity's sake, with what it is that they garnered.
Yeah. Wow. So now, I'm sorry, that was really heavy, huh, Robert?
No. Well, but I mean, it's true because, like you say, I mean, when you went through that list of all the things that are happening to dumb down and disempower, people, the masses.
Exactly.
I mean, it's you hear. Little bits and pieces of it, here and there, but then when you put it all together, I mean, it looks like no matter where you turn in today's society, you are going to be impacted by multiple sources of that attempt, to take away one's power.
Sure. Yeah, it's a full spectrum attack, and it's by the power elite, and every country's doing it because they're all been, usurped by psychopathic entities, and these people know each other. It's almost like a club. They can recognize each other, and they can recognize the rest of us, the suckers, but they certainly recognize each other, and they know that they have a common goal in life, which is to rule with power and cause people to lick the dust from their boot. They all want that, and we won't even touch on the perversions and these people are, the average person. It is just shocking and horrifying what these people are capable of. Study serial killers. For writing this book, I covered a lot of books on serial killers. I've studied them and read the case studies of what they did to their victims. I mean, it's not for the faint-hearted. It's forget about any horror movie you've seen. These people are beyond that. They're beyond Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And remember, these people have the same psychology as our world leaders do. Now the psychopaths that kidnap and torture people for days on end and then murder them, that's just their kink. Their mentality is exactly the same as our world leaders. Now, our world leaders might not be that kinky. They might be. They might have people kidnapped so that they can torture them, like in those hostile movies, where rich people pay to torture innocent victims. I'm sure that happens, because that's the way psychopaths think. Once you get to know how they think, and it's ugly, and that's why I'm going to have to plug the book, The Way of the Warrior, because, it really takes a lot of guts to look at what these people are and what they're doing to us. It's not for the faint-hearted, to look at it and to see what's going on. That alone requires a lot of courage. It's you have to look at the dark side, and how many people are willing to do that? Yeah, you need, and certainly not fearful people, and not people that are coward into fear and obedience. They can't do that. So we need warriors to look at the problem. Think of it as you got injured, and maybe you broke your arm or something. Now somebody's got to take a look in there and sort through all the blood and bone and figure out what's wrong. How many people can do that? Sure, surgeons, doctors can do that. Right? I mean, you got to take a look at that in order to fix it. And it's the same thing with our society. We need people that are strong enough to take a look at all the blood and gore that's going on, and to try and understand the insanity of our entire system. And that's hard to do because it's really negative and it's really defeating. So we need people with courage and spirit to look into that.
Yeah. It is true. I mean, that we really do need a groundswell, really kind of an army of warriors in a way to be able to deal with the multi-pronged attack, on individuality and empowerment. So when we were talking about warriors, exactly how would you describe what a warrior is, or what does it mean to be a warrior?
Well, the term "the way of the warrior" has its origins in Eastern philosophy. According to Webster's dictionary, a warrior is either a man who is familiar with weapons and warfare, and or conversely, somebody that is has a lot of courage and physical prowess, and that all applies. A warrior is somebody that has some knowledge of combat, and also he should have courage and physical prowess and be masterful at things. But with the Eastern philosophy, by adding the prefix "the way of," the way implies it's an English version of an old Chinese word called the Tao, and which gives us the philosophy of Taoism. I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So what it therefore implies is not just a man who is brave and good at handling weapons and can get things done, but it's also somebody that does that in the context of a spiritual path. So the way of the warrior is following a spiritual path to spiritual perfection, whatever that goal may be that you set for yourself. And traditionally in the Hindu tradition or the yogic tradition, there have been three traditional paths of spirituality, or three traditional ways. And those three ways are the way of the intellect, whereby one, tries to achieve spiritual perfection through complex visualizations and study and understanding and rationalizing and observation. So it's the kind of science mind, the left brain. Then there is the way of the heart, which is a spiritual path by which you create beauty in the world. You perform, what do you call it? I've been up for 2 days with a back problem. Excuse me. Charity. I'm sorry. Charity. Charitable works, and you volunteer your time, and you teach about love and beauty. And then the third way is the way of the fakir, which is somebody who disciplines his body. These are the people that will sit in cross-legged and meditate for days on end, and will go on fasts and will isolate themselves into the woods, things like that. So those are the three traditional paths. Now, the way of the warrior is all three of those ways done at the same time, plus combat. So that makes it really kind of a complex philosophy in a way, and the great warriors from history, when you read their life stories, they have all embodied those three ways. let me give you an example. My personal favorite warrior from history is Miyamoto Musashi. He was a 17th century Japanese swordsman, and he's famous as one of the lords of the sword in Japan. And he was an expert at sword fighting, fought 60 duels with the masters of every major school of sword fighting in Japan, and never lost a duel. So he was feared throughout Japan as just top sword fighter there was. But he was also a calligrapher and a painter, and he did exquisite paintings, wonderful work. He was an expert at the sume style of painting, and he also did wood carving, and he also created his own. It's a part of the Japanese sword that is the hilt, and it protects the hand. And in Japan, it's called, or Japanese, it's called the tsuba. And they're usually decorative. And he carved his own, and he carved those for his friends. So you can see then that not only was he a warrior, a master of the physical world, he was also emotional. He was, creating beauty and painting and carving. And he was a craftsman. And he wrote that, there is no art that he would not undertake, everything from gardening and weaving to, cooking. And thirdly, he was also a fantastic philosopher. In the end of his days, he retired to a cave, and he wrote his famous book, The Book of Five Rings, in which he, distills all the knowledge of his 60 years of following his path. And he called his path Teho, but it is definitely the warrior's path. So there you can see now what is the way of the warrior. Well, first of all, somebody that's physical, he has some combat capabilities, he has courage and strength and prowess. Secondly, he's in touch with the feminine side. He creates beauty, he paints, he does flower arranging, he carves. And then thirdly, he follows the way of the intellect. He's a philosopher and a writer, and so there you go. That's the way of the warrior. So in my book, I try to show how people can incorporate those aspects into your own life, because Musashi said that you follow your own way. Everybody must make the way for themselves. So here are the guidelines to make your own way. So if you don't want to study martial arts, then maybe you like dance. Then take dance. If you don't like painting, then pick up a guitar. If you don't like, reading philosophy, then teach a class on wild edible flowers. You can create your own path. So long as you take elements from the intellect, from the emotion and the heart, and from the body, the physical body, and you combine those three, practices however way you want, and that is following the path of the warrior.
Okay, great. That really defines warrior in much higher level than I think when people hear the word warrior, they usually tend to focus strictly on the physical aspect, and not bringing in the emotional and intellectual aspect to being a warrior. So, we're already halfway through, Stefan, so I want to take just a quick break and do invite listeners, if you'd like to call in and ask any questions, you can call in at 619-789-4359. And for those of you listening live in the chat room, if you have any questions that you would like for me to pose to Stefan, please feel free to type them in, and we will get to those right after the break. And then when we come back, I want to next talk about if anyone, can anyone be a warrior? Is everyone capable of being a warrior? So, but we're going to go ahead and do that when we come back. Okay, Stefan?
Great, thanks.
Okay, hold on, everybody. We'll be right back. Okay, everyone. Thank you for staying with us. Again, our very special guest today, joining us from Canada, is Stefan Verstappen, and he is author of A Master's Guide to the Way of the Warrior. He's also author of many other books, and also offers urban survival strategies. So you can find out more by visiting his website, www.urbansurvivalstrategies.com, and I do have a direct link to that website in the show page description. Okay, so with that, we're back, Stefan. Thanks for staying with me.
Oh, no problem.
Great. Okay, so now the warrior, the encompasses the physical, emotional, and intellectual aspects of being. So, is everyone capable of being a warrior?
That's difficult. It's yes and no. I think everyone is capable of improving their lives by adapting and adopting aspects of the warrior way. For example, no matter what path you're on yourself personally, there are philosophies, there are admonitions, there are guideposts, and there are training exercises that will benefit anyone. For example, in the book, The Master's Guide to the Way of the Warrior, I have a whole section on sensory enhancement techniques. And I devised most of these techniques when I was teaching a blind woman martial arts. And we had to figure out how she could use her other senses in a combat situation, but not just in a combat situation, but in life in general, how she can use her sense of smell and touch and hearing and even magnetic direction to better navigate her environment, to allow her to live a fuller life, So even though I would say she was a pretty good warrior, she learned how to defend herself. She knew self-defense techniques. By the end of our training, she wanted to do sword fighting. So I said, okay.
Wow.
We had some padded sticks, and I taught her the moves, a few of the moves, and I said, okay, then use your hearing and your sense of smell. And there's different ways that you can train your ears. It's not just what you hear, but also what you can't hear. There's subtlety to that, and it's actually pretty easy to train that. The thing is, nobody ever does it. Nobody ever teaches you, listen, Robert, can you hear that? And you go, no. Well, let me train you. Simple exercise, how you can hear that. Nobody ever does that. So something like that will improve your life. It certainly improved her life. And so I gave her the padded sword, and son of a gun, she would chase me around the dojo, swinging that stick around, I was in mortal fear for my life, And so, this was a remarkable improvement based on really little effort. I'm surprised. I thought, everything takes 10 years. No, actually it doesn't. There's a lot of things you can learn and apply to your life to improve your life right away. Simple things. So to be and I don't want it to sound like it's a supremacist sort of philosophy, but to be an ultimate warrior, not everybody can be that. And that's because there needs to be a genetic component. Now, for example, we know that approximately 20% of the population have what's called the alpha male kind of genetics, right? They're what we call the leader types, the born leaders. And that comprises about 20% of the population. And so I think you would need to be a born leader. And then you would need some training in which you have faced danger. This is a key element because ultimately a warrior is those warriors, and let's say there used to be 20% of them in our society, they were like the sheepdogs in our society. They were the ones that would sniff out trouble and rally people to resist tyranny and, and provide guidance. They were leaders, but leaders within the community. This is different from national leader, political leader, blah, 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 blah. No, these were real leaders. These were people that were within their community that people looked up to, that trusted because they were strong and they were courageous and they were fair and honest. And therefore, people would rally to them. Now, no surprise, the state has targeted these type of people for elimination through partly, the whole system that we previously discussed, the fear, the dumbing them down, but also look at the bubble wrap kid phenomenon, I'm almost 60, and when I grew up, we were wild as animals. We ran through the forest all day long. We took chances and took risks that today's parents would have a heart attack over, and yet nobody I know ever got hurt. So, but this bubble wrap phenomenon is not because oh, we're so concerned about kids. No, this is an effort to dampen the vigor of that 20% of people that are born in our society that would be natural born leaders within their communities, but we're now, undermining them. We're dehumanizing them, demasculating them,
Mm-hmm.
So the way of the warrior then is to appeal to that 20%. They have to face danger, and this is the key factor in this. And what I mean by danger is something as simple as when I took the Outward Bound course at graduation, they would paddle you out to a deserted part of the forest, and they would give you a pack of matches and a knife and a little bit of rope, and they'll say, we'll be back in 4 days. Now, you're all by yourself there. There's no way to signal help. There's bears, and you could drown, and you could fall off a tree, and you had to feed yourself and build a shelter and build a fire, and so actually your life was in danger. They don't do that anymore. That kind of stuff is not allowed. Maybe in the military. In the military, they still do it. But they don't do that for 13-year-old kids, right? Because that's what they want.
No, they have to be arrested for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you're there alone in the dark in the middle of the forest. And I mean, up here in Canada, you're deep, dark forest, right? And there's bears and snakes and things like that around here. And you're all by yourself, and there's no one to help you. And you are actually, there is a good chance, not a good chance, but there is some chance that you could hurt and fall or drown or whatever. Mm-hmm. So your life is now a danger. So you must face that danger. That is the key to becoming a warrior. You have to do something in which you face danger. And the reason for that is because when you have to face what we are up against, these psychopaths that are in charge of things and their schemes for us. In order for you to face up to them, you have to be acclimatized to fear and danger, because that's what that entails. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. It's kind of like once you have faced and conquered, faced danger and conquered the fear, then when you're faced with it again in different circumstances, you already have the experience to be able to, overcome and challenge that particular type of danger.
Exactly. So, if it's a, suburban housewife can use the book to, help her with her yoga studies and, or with her Pilates, or with, tending a garden. Mm-hmm. I don't expect her to, rappel off a cliff or something like that, or to, venture alone into the woods. I don't really need her to do that. And then, but I would never expect her to have to go up against a psychopath on her own, because she wouldn't be able to handle it. She would, Sun Tzu says, you don't send troops up. You don't fight battles you can't win. So I would never expect people like that to, fight my battle of going up against these monsters. But, for a certain percentage of people, and, these include things like, search and rescue, firemen, emergency responders, they all face danger. They're all warriors, Police, yes and no, and there's a distinction, because one distinction we make between a warrior and a soldier is that a warrior fights his own battles. He doesn't take orders. He's not an order taker. A soldier obeys the orders of a power structure, and the power structure right now is in the hands of psychopaths. So a soldier is basically a thug for the psychopaths. That includes our armed forces. Sorry, guys, I know, support the troops and all that, but you're working for the wrong side. You're on the wrong team. You're obeying orders and carrying out actions of extreme violence and cruelty from a structure that you had no say in, that your opinion was never asked about, and that does not necessarily conform with your own internal morality. So you are not a warrior. You're a soldier. You're a mercenary. Although there can be soldiers and there can be cops that, they
embrace more the intellectual and emotional aspects of what a warrior would be.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's all based on, ultimately what I say is that a warrior is an anarchist. And what I mean by that is an anarchist, not common understanding of the term, which has been, diluted and distorted. An anarchist is simply this: I don't want to take orders from you, and I don't want to give you orders. Now, if you're a good leader, I'd be happy to follow you. And if I'm a good leader and you want to follow me, that's fine too. So that's what an anarchist is, and that's what a warrior is. So a warrior cannot, the irony is that when they recruit for soldiers and for police, what do they dangle in front of young men? They dangle the archetype and the image of a warrior. You're going to go fight for your country. You're going to save your women folk, and bring freedom to the world. Of course. So soldiers and policemen think they're warriors because that's how they were indoctrinated. Unfortunately, and as many will tell you, once you get into the military, it's got nothing to do with being a warrior. It's got everything to do with being a gangster. So, although they do face danger, and if they were to adopt the way of the warrior, they would be the ultimate warriors. Yeah.
Yeah. So now, and I have an understanding of, what a warrior is, and that there, some people may not have the physical capacity for that physical confrontation aspect. But I guess my question is that, granted that we each have our own innate abilities, to be able to be a warrior on some level. Maybe if you look at the three components, the physical, emotional, and intellectual, that combined, maybe maybe a 30% physical, 60% intellectual or emotional.
Sure.
Basically, kind of have a different percentile makeup. Is in your opinion, in order to combat the this tendency to dumb down and disempower us, is it best to first of all recognize build up within myself the warrior capabilities that I have, and then combine that with other warriors in order to be able, because obviously you can't do it alone. I mean, it seems like, you can fight your own fight, but in order to address a massive front, on so many different levels, it seems like it's going to take many numbers to be able to do that.
Yeah, and, I'm going to address that in my upcoming book, the Community Survival Plan, which is how to organize groups and teams. And it's not out yet. I'm a little bit behind on my publishing. Yeah, it's almost done. It's 90% done. As soon as this book is finished, and it's coming out in a couple of weeks. But the reason I published, or I'm going with this book first, is because the third book, the Community Survivor Plan, how to organize groups and teams and communities that can support each other and look after each other and provide a unified front. The thing is, people can't cooperate on anything, and they individually have no skills to offer anymore. I've tried for years now to organize communities, organize groups, organize classes and things. Can we work together? Can we make a plan? Can we, and I've joined other groups, many groups, everything from, transition groups and self-sufficiency groups to survival groups and prepper groups and all over the place. And we cannot cooperate together. We can't get there. We're not there yet. And now, what I was quoting earlier, Sun Tzu in his book, The Art of War, he says, it is a waste of troops to throw untrained troops into battle. And that's the problem that we have now. Before we can organize together into communities to fight this, we ourselves aren't up to the task yet. We have no training for this. And so that's why, people often write to me, oh, well, maybe we should all get guns and rise up against the government. No, No, you will all die because nobody's trained for this. You have no idea how difficult it is to put together a unified front against the forces that are aligned against us. Think of this as, you're Frodo and get, trying to, go through Mordor to bury the ring. This is what you're up against.
Yeah.
And thousands of the government directly.
There we go.
Cannot
I lost you there. I lost you there for a second. Sorry, Stefan. I had lost you there. That's all right. You were going in and out, but now you're back. So this is I kind of lost you at Mordor, I think. The dark force kind of interrupted our little communication here.
We can't.
Go ahead.
Sorry, no. So we're Frodo and Samwise going through Mordor. This is what we are, because who are we? I'm nobody. I got nothing. I have no power. Nobody I know has any power or billions of dollars to fight against this. We're all just little guys, And for us to think that we're going to go up against the system, we can't do it. But we need to do first is empower ourselves so that 20% will become the warriors that can actually face the darkness and face the evil. Great. But the other 80%, if we can raise their warriorhood just a little bit, make them a little bit braver, make them a little bit more self-sufficient, make them a little bit more critical thinking of things, and introduce that to the general population. If we can do that, then from there, we can move to actual activism and actions in communities, right? It's just that, and especially with the young people, I tell the story about this young guy I was teaching, he's 31. He's got a 12-year-old daughter, and everyone that knows me knows that if you want to meet with me or talk with me or something like that, I will never go to a coffee shop or a restaurant. No, we go for a mountain bike ride, or we go into the canoe, or we go for a walk through the woods. I can't stand to be indoors, right? So I said, I'm going for a mountain bike ride up into the mountains. This is when I was living in California. Oh, okay, I'm coming. So he brings his bicycle, and the chain is off the sprocket. He goes, oh, the pedals don't work. I said, well, look at it. The chain is off the sprocket. He goes, what? Well, how do you fix that? I said, well, watch this.
Oh, no.
Take one finger, lift up the chain, put it back on the sprocket. Oh. Okay, well, we're ready to go. I said, no, we got 2 flat tires. Oh, what do you do about that? I mean, here's a 31-year-old man that doesn't know how to blow up a tire. So what am I going to say to him? Oh, yeah, listen, rise up against the system and fight back. I mean, this guy can't ride a bicycle.
No.
This is indicative of most of the young people nowadays. They're that incompetent. So the way of the warrior, preaches or whatever, self-reliance, learn how to do things, learn how to be a master at something, and that, like Alta would say, if you're master of one thing, then you can become master of many things, So that's where we got to start, Robert.
Well, it does sound like that. And, boy, I have run into so many people like that 31-year-old, I mean, to me, it just... I'm just stunned that some of these people can actually survive in today's environment. I mean, truly, and I just, I just sit back in amazement, and it's just like how do it's really that dumbing down, that successful dumbing down, of people, and to me, it is frightening in a way because it is. It's that kind of lack of preparedness that, when it comes time to confronting anything, that they're just not going to do it. They're going to be sheeple. They're just going to kind of go along with whatever way the wind blows, and right now it's not blowing really nice. I mean, it's pretty messy out there right now.
Yeah. No, they're going to cave, interfere, and they will beg and cooperate in any way they can in order to have the fear removed. And that's what's going to happen, you know. And that's exactly the strategy of these psychopaths. They know that that's how it works, you know. Same thing when you study the serial killers. You know, they terrorize their victims. The more the victims scream and cry and beg for mercy, the happier the psychopath is. And so the same thing with our leaders. The more we worry, oh, the government must save us. We're scared. The terrorists. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah, the government's going to save you. You know, the government never saves you. So how can these people, ever have a chance to fight back? And that's the future generation. That's the future. Yeah. We failed, our generation, my generation, not me personally, because I've been this way my whole life, and I've always taught, martial arts, but not just martial arts. I've taught first aid. I've taught wilderness survival to, at-risk youth and then former offenders and things like that. I was I've always taught this kind of stuff, but, the men of our society have failed to teach our sons and daughters, because women are absolutely as capable of becoming a warrior as a man.
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, even possibly more so. I've met braver women than men these days, But we've failed to teach them this, And without that quality, what hope is there for the future? The future is going to be tyranny and slavery. That's what the future is, unless we are able to, give something back to the future generations that they can use, some character, some techniques, some knowledge, and the courage to do that. And that's what I'm trying to do with this book. It's not perfect, but it's an effort, and we should all make some kind of an effort.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a starting point, and the idea of helping people get out of the mindset of just accepting things the way they are, and then just challenging, what gets passed down your way, and then just that critical thinking aspect, what we talked about earlier in the show, how important it is. And now, gosh, we're down to the last 5 minutes here. So one of the things that I do want to kind of reinforce is that, one of the things, you talked a little bit about some Eastern philosophy when it comes time to the way of the warrior. For those who are out there who, maybe aren't so, drawn to following that philosophy, I think I would love for you to, again, kind of emphasize how important it is to be able to really create your own, way with, the intellectual, emotional, and physical aspect, that you don't have to necessarily have a belief in Eastern philosophy in order to be able to become a warrior.
Absolutely. The Eastern philosophy is, as a starting point, what I'll do is I'll, use some quotes from famous philosophers like Confucius and Lao Tzu and, some of the Japanese Taekwondo Soho. And, they're in quotes at the beginning of the chapter, and it's just a starting point. Mm-hmm. But I also explain everything from a scientific point of view. Me personally, I'm very much bent towards rational logic. I don't, if somebody says, well, go with the flow. Well, I need to understand what go means. I need what flow means. I need to understand how this works in terms of physics or, psychology.
Right.
So everything that's in the book is backed up by science. So for every quote from Eastern philosophy, I also have a quote from Western scientists, And in the footnotes and in the endnotes and in the body of the text, depending on how important I think it is to the story at the time, there's an explanation of how this works. For example, life is but a dream. We've heard that all the time in Eastern philosophy, and it's even a quote by that poet, what's his name? Edgar Allan Poe wrote it. Life is but a dream within a dream, Okay, well, that's a great platitude. What does that mean? Well, we look into how the brain works. And the brain works by processing sensory information into electrochemical signals, which is processed through the thalamus and is then projected onto the cortex of your frontal lobe, in which you, whoever you are, experiences as reality. The thing is that the brain does not differentiate between external reality and internal reality. That's why you can use visualization to improve physical skills. So what the philosopher said was, life is but a dream is actually true, because your dreams are almost as real to you as reality is when you're in that dream. And it's certainly as real to your brain. And if you were to use visualization techniques to improve your health or shrink a tumor or something like that, that is as real to your brain as if it happened from the outside. So the distinction between the external world and the internal world is really blurred, because that's the way the brain works. So life is but a dream, So that's how I'll explain everything in the book.
Yeah, that's great. Well, gosh, this has really been a wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed speaking with you and learned a lot. And keep me in mind when that community one comes out, because I would really like to talk about that. Granted, a lot of us probably aren't ready yet for joining this community or making the community, but I would love to be able to talk about that as a next step for those who are, where you're ready.
Yeah. Well, we can try to make communities right now. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Stefan. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Well, thanks for having me on, Robert. Appreciate being here.
It is my pleasure. Again, everyone, today my very special guest joining us from Canada has been Stefan Verstappen, author of A Master's Guide to the Way of the Warrior. Again, you can find out more about this book, his other books, and other services that he offers by visiting his website, which is www.urbansurvivalstrategies.com. And again, there is a direct link to his website in the show page description. So go ahead and check it out. I'm sure there is a lot there for you to explore and to take advantage of. So I want to thank you for joining us for this edition of the Bringing Inspiration to Earth show. And until we meet again,